Welcome to Despicable Me Deep Dive Podcast. Today on the show, what lawmakers call an instant sucker
Oh,
tax.
interesting.
Yeah, an instant sucker tax. So we're diving deep into something that I'm sure a lot of our listeners maybe even participate in or have participated in, the lottery.
Yeah.
But is it all it's cracked up to be?
Well, that's what we're here to find out, right?
Yeah.
We're looking at it from different perspectives and kind of peeling back the layers to see what this whole lottery system is all about.
Right, and you've brought some really interesting sources to the table.
Yeah, I think these sources will really help us understand what's going on beneath the surface.
For sure. So we have the Despicable Me YouTube channel. They don't really mince words, calling the Maine lottery a scam that basically preys on the vulnerable.
Right, they're very, very direct in their criticism. It's
Yeah,
pretty hard-hitting stuff.
yeah, it is. And then we have LIFE accounting, which details the often surprising tax burdens for lottery winners.
Yeah, that's something people don't often think about, right? They see the big jackpot numbers, but not the big bite the government takes.
Right, exactly. Then there's John Stossel, and he has a pretty critical take on what he sees as government hypocrisy, specifically in the realm of gambling.
Yeah, his perspective brings up some interesting points about individual freedom and the role of government.
For sure. And finally, Johnny Harris, he has a great video exploring the idea of the lottery as a regressive tax on the poor.
Right. His video really breaks down how the system might actually be working against the very people it claims to benefit.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack this idea of the instant sucker tax.
Yeah, it's a provocative term for
Right.
sure, and it's worth exploring why some people use it.
We want to figure out why this term is being used, who it affects the most, and just really kind of, you know what I mean, like get under the hood of this whole lottery system.
Exactly. Understanding the mechanics and who potentially benefits and who might be disadvantaged, I think that's key.
For sure. Okay, so let's start with this idea of the sucker tax. The Despicable Me video straight up calls the lottery a scam.
Yeah.
Like, no hesitation. Why do they use such a harsh, I mean, that's a pretty strong word, right?
Yeah, it is. I think their argument is that it exploits people's hopes and dreams,
Yeah.
especially those who are struggling financially.
Right.
They cite a 2002 paper by Professor Ross Rubenstein, who talks about the lottery having an implicit tax.
An implicit tax.
Yeah, basically the idea that even though buying a ticket is voluntary, you're essentially losing money the moment you buy it.
So even if you win, like you're still losing out on a huge chunk of that money because of this built-in tax.
Right. You're paying for the privilege of playing even if you end up winning something. It's like a fee just to enter the game.
So it's like, I'm trying to think of an analogy here. It's like going to a store and you're buying, I don't know, a gallon of milk, but they're like, oh, you want that gallon of milk? It's going to be, $5, but you also have to pay an extra $1 just for the right to buy it.
Right.
And you're like, wait, what? Why? I'm already paying for the milk.
Exactly. It's like a hidden cost that's not immediately transparent, but it's
Well,
there nonetheless.
right. And that's what this implicit tax is with the lottery.
That's the argument they're making, yes.
Right.
That a big chunk of the money you spend on tickets is gone right from the start, regardless of the outcome.
And this is where the idea of it being a tax on the poor comes in, right?
Right. And that's a really crucial point.
Yeah, because the Despicable Me video, they mentioned a 2014 CNN report that found Americans spent more on the lottery than all other forms of entertainment combined.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty staggering statistic.
Yeah, it was a massive $70 billion.
Wow.
And then some research from North Carolina showed that the poorest counties actually had the highest lottery sales.
So the people who can least afford to lose money are the ones spending the most on it.
Yeah. It's kind of like imagine you're in a desert and you're dying of thirst,
Okay.
right? And someone comes up to you and they're like, "Hey, I'll sell you this bottle of water for, all the money you have left."
Yeah.
And there's a tiny chance that there's a diamond at the bottom of the bottle.
Right. So you're desperate, so you might take that chance, even though it's unlikely to pay off.
Right. And that's kind of what this lottery system feels like, especially for those who are struggling financially.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like a mirage in the desert, offering hope, but often delivering disappointment.
Exactly. And then there was the Carnegie Mellon study that you mentioned.
Right. They talk about this vicious cycle where the lottery preys on the hopes of low-income individuals who are looking for a way out of poverty.
Right.
But instead of helping them escape, it can actually keep them trapped in a cycle of spending and losing, while the state benefits from their losses.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up when you think about it that way. Okay, so we've talked about who's buying these tickets. Let's talk about what they're actually getting for their money in terms of odds.
Right, the chances of actually winning.
Yeah. And Johnny Harris had that amazing analogy with the bathtubs of rice.
Oh, yeah, that was really powerful.
Yeah, one golden grain of rice in like, what was it, 66 bathtubs?
66 bathtubs, each filled with 4.5 million grains of rice. So you're talking about incredibly long odds.
Yeah, it's like finding a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is spread across multiple football fields.
Exactly. The chances of finding that one golden grain are almost infinitesimally small.
It's mind-boggling. And then the Despicable Me video, they went into like the nitty-gritty of scratch-off tickets.
Yeah, they looked at the actual payout rates for different scratch-off games.
And they said that even the best ones in New York only paid out an average of 88 cents for every dollar spent.
Right, so you're guaranteed to lose money even if you play the best scratch-off game.
It's built into the system. And then the other ones, like the cheaper ones, they pay out even less.
Yeah, some of them only return around 61 cents on the dollar. They called it the second worst investment idea ever.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're losing money guaranteed, that's pretty much the opposite of investing, right? It's more like throwing money away with a tiny, tiny sliver of hope attached to it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
You're essentially paying for the possibility of winning, but the possibility is so slim that statistically you're going to lose money.
And John Stossel, he compared lottery payouts to other forms of gambling.
Right.
And he said that government-run lotteries, they actually have the worst payout rates of all.
Yeah, he argued that even slot machines, which are often seen as a losing proposition, usually pay out around 90%.
Wow. So you have a better chance at winning or at least losing less with slot machines than with the lottery.
That's what Stossel's analysis suggests, yes.
Yeah.
Which is ironic considering that lotteries are often promoted as a fun and harmless way to support state programs.
Okay, so let's talk about that. We often hear that lottery money goes to, good causes like education.
Yeah, that's a common justification for the lottery system.
Right. But Johnny Harris looked into that too.
He did, and he found that while some states do allocate lottery funds to education, it's not always as straightforward as it seems.
Okay, so what's the catch?
Well, in some cases, the money is used to supplement existing budgets rather than providing a net increase in funding.
So it's not actually adding to the education budget, it's just shifting money around.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's like taking money from one pocket and putting it in another. The total amount might stay the same, but it's being presented as if it's adding to the pot.
It's kind of misleading, isn't it?
It can be,
Mm.
especially if people are under the impression that buying lottery tickets directly translates to increased funding for education.
Right. So it's more like I'm trying to think of a good visual here. It's like imagine you have a glass of water.
Okay.
That's already full. And then you take another pitcher of water and you pour it into the glass, but at the same time you're like secretly draining water out of the bottom.
So the level stays the same, but it looks like you're adding more.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a real increase.
Yeah.
And then Johnny Harris also found that lottery money sometimes goes to other things besides education.
He did. He mentioned that in Colorado, it can go to parks and wildlife, in Nebraska to the state fair, and even to problem gambling organizations in Minnesota.
Problem gambling organizations.
Yeah, which is kind of ironic considering that the lottery itself is a form of gambling that can lead to problems for some people.
That's interesting. So it's not all going to education like a lot of people might assume.
Right, it can be spread across a variety of programs, and it's important to be aware of that.
Okay, so let's talk about the lucky few who actually win big. The jackpot winners.
Right, the ones who defy the odds.
They must be set for life, right? Like, all their problems are solved.
Well, the LYFE accounting video suggests that it's not always so simple.
Oh, really?
They broke down the tax implications of winning a huge jackpot, like, let's say, $700 million.
Yeah.
And if the winner chooses to take the lump sum, they could end up paying close to $230 million in federal and state taxes.
Oh, wow. So even if you win hundreds of millions, the government still takes a massive cut.
They do. And even if you choose the annuity option, which spreads out the payments over time, you'll still be paying substantial taxes each year.
So it's not like you get to just walk away with the full amount and live like a king or queen?
No, there are significant financial implications to consider, and it's not always as glamorous as it might seem.
Right. And then the Despicable Me video, they brought up another point about jackpot winners.
Yeah.
They said that a lot of them actually end up bankrupt.
Yeah, they cited a Forbes article that reported around a third of lottery winners end up filing for bankruptcy.
A third. That's crazy. You would think that winning all that money would set you up for life.
You would think so. But it seems that sudden wealth can be difficult to manage. And for some people, it can lead to poor financial decisions and even more problems.
Right, like they're not used to handling that much money and they end up making bad investments or spending it all too quickly.
Yeah, and there are also reports of increased rates of depression, divorce, and even suicide among lottery winners. It seems like winning the lottery can actually be a curse for some people.
Wow, that's really sad. So it's not always the happy ending that we imagine.
No, it's a reminder that money doesn't always solve problems, and in some cases, it can actually create new ones.
Okay, and finally, Johnny Harris talked about the amount of revenue that the government generates from lotteries.
Yeah, he highlighted the massive scale of the revenue stream.
And it was like billions of dollars, right?
He said that in 2020, the total revenue from lotteries in the U.S. was around $27 billion.
$27 billion. That's huge.
It is. And it raises the question of whether the lottery is essentially just another form of taxation, one that disproportionately affects those who can least afford it.
Yeah, it's like a voluntary tax, but it's targeting the people who are already struggling.
Right. And it's often marketed as a way to support good causes.
Yeah.
But as we've seen, the reality is much more complex than that.
Okay, and finally, let's bring it back to John Stossel. He was pretty outspoken about the government's role in all of this.
Yeah, he accused the government of hypocrisy.
Right. Why hypocrisy?
Well, he pointed out that politicians often criticize other forms of gambling, like casinos and online betting.
Right.
But at the same time, they're heavily promoting their own state lotteries, which, as we've discussed, often have the worst odds for the players.
So it's like they're saying gambling is bad, but only when it's not run by the government.
That's essentially his argument. He
Mhm.
believes that adults should be free to make their own choices about gambling and that the government shouldn't have a monopoly on it, especially when their own system is the least favorable to the participants.
It's kind of like a double standard, isn't it?
It can certainly be seen that way.
So when lawmakers call the lottery a sucker tax or an instant sucker tax, I guess they're pointing out all these things we've talked about,
Right.
like the incredibly long odds, the low payouts, the fact that it disproportionately impacts lower income individuals, and the huge profits that the government makes from it.
Yeah, I think that captures the essence of the criticism. It's not just about the game itself, it's about the system and who benefits from it.
Okay, so to kind of wrap things up, what we've learned today is that the lottery is a lot more than just a harmless game of chance.
Right. It's a complex system with social and economic implications that are worth considering.
Yeah. And for many people, especially those who are struggling financially, it represents a hope. But that hope is often based on extremely slim odds.
And the money they're spending to fuel that hope could potentially be used for more immediate needs.
Yeah, and while some good causes might benefit from lottery revenue, the structure of the system itself raises a lot of questions about fairness and who really benefits the most.
Exactly. It's important to be aware of the potential downsides and to think critically about the arguments both for and against the lottery.
So we hope this deep dive has given you all a new perspective on the lottery. We definitely encourage you to check out the sources we discussed today.
Yeah, the Despicable Maine and Johnny Harris videos are really insightful. LYFE Accounting breaks down the financial realities for winners, and John Stossel offers a different perspective on government involvement.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts. What stands out to you? Do you think the lottery is a harmless game, or is it something more complicated than that?
Is it truly a path to a better life, or is it a system that might actually be perpetuating inequality?
Those are some big questions to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time.